All right. Ready to dive deep.
Always.
Today, Genesis.
Oh, an excellent choice.
It's got, well, everything, really.
It does, doesn't it?
Creation, patriarchs, the whole shebang.
Foundations of so much, really.
Before we get into all that, though, what pops into your head when you hear Genesis?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
For me, it's how, despite being so ancient, it still, evokes strong reactions. I think it's because, well, it tackles these huge questions.
Yeah.
Our origins, right, for
Sure.
Relationship with the divine,
Yeah.
what it even means to be human.
I get that.
And through these incredibly vivid and enduring narratives.
It's true. Not just a dry history lesson.
No, not at all.
There's drama, betrayal, love.
Even a bit of dark humor in there.
Okay, so starting at the very beginning.
Right.
6 days of creation.
The classic.
We know the basics.
Of course.
But the order things appear.
You're thinking light before sun and moon. Plants before animals. It's like a puzzle.
It is.
It tells us about how back then they understood the cosmos.
Different from us today.
Very different.
So the order in Genesis reflects.
It reflects the ancient Near Eastern cosmology. Not Big Bang, not galaxies over billions of years.
Yo.
It was about order out of chaos.
So less scientific accuracy and more about conveying a deeper truth.
You've got it.
About God's power and purpose in creation.
Yes, they believed in a hierarchical universe.
Oh, Erica.
Heavens above, earth below, underworld beneath.
Like layers.
Yes, and creation mirrors that each day.
Each day.
Brings new order, new complexity.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then there's that refrain, God saw that it was good.
After each stage.
Like a divine stamp of approval.
Right.
More than approval, I'd say.
Cool.
It's affirming that creation's inherently good.
Inherently good.
Quite radical for its time.
How so?
Many cultures back then saw the material world as flawed.
Flawed.
Even evil.
Interesting.
But Genesis, creation is good because it flows from God's goodness.
Never thought of it that way.
Changes the perspective.
It really does.
So from this perfect creation to we get the first humans
Adam and Eve.
living it up in the Garden of Eden.
Sounds pretty nice.
Right.
But then there's the forbidden fruit.
Yes.
The oldest temptation, I think.
It is. Speaks to something very human, though.
Oh.
Curiosity.
Okay.
Desire for knowledge. Maybe even a little rebellious streak.
I see that.
Serpent tempts Eve with the promise of becoming like God.
Knowing good and evil.
Right. It's a power play, suggesting she can transcend.
And she takes the bait.
She does.
I always wonder, though, what's the big deal?
About the fruit.
Yeah, is it just disobeying orders or is it deeper?
It's definitely deeper.
Okay, go.
The tree, it represents a boundary.
A boundary.
To human knowledge, to experience.
So by eating it,
they cross that boundary.
Gaining knowledge, but losing it. Like a cosmic coming-of-age story.
Exactly. They gain awareness, but lose paradise.
Makes you think.
And their relationship with God changes.
Oh, how so?
Shame, fear, they hide from him.
Instead of walking with him in the garden?
Right.
It's like that feeling when you realize you've messed up big time.
And everything feels different.
Tough.
And the consequences, pretty severe.
Banished from Eden, forced to toil, to suffer.
Stark contrast to the garden.
It is.
It sets the stage for, well, us, our struggles with temptation, mistakes, the pain that follows.
But you said God doesn't abandon them?
No, even in exile.
So, he's still there.
He provides clothing, keeps interacting.
So even though they messed up, he's offering a path.
Toward redemption, yes.
Okay, so Adam and Eve, outside the garden, start a family.
They do.
Cain and Abel.
Now that's some family drama.
Sibling rivalry gone wrong.
Horribly wrong.
Violence enters the picture.
Cain's jealousy.
Over God favoring Abel's offering.
Leads to the first murder.
Chilling reminder of envy's power.
And unchecked anger.
It really is the darkness within us.
Even within family.
And God's response to Cain is fascinating.
It is.
Punishment, yes, curse to wonder.
But also mercy, the mark for protection.
Justice, but with compassion.
It's complex.
It highlights God's complex nature.
As depicted in Genesis, for sure.
But the violence doesn't end there, right?
No.
Humanity spiraling downward.
Leading to one of the most dramatic events.
The Great Flood.
Terrifying and hopeful.
In what way?
God, grieved by humanity's wickedness, he decides to wipe out almost all life.
A complete reset.
A chance to start over.
And in the midst of this,
Noah,
the righteous man,
chosen to build the ark
to preserve a remnant
of humanity and the animals.
a glimmer of hope in the chaos.
The ark symbolizes both judgment and salvation.
How so?
God holds us accountable, but also offers redemption.
Not just physical survival.
No, it's about preserving goodness, righteousness.
For them to flourish again.
Exactly.
And after the flood,
God makes a covenant with Noah.
never to flood the earth again.
A fresh start, a new chapter.
And the rainbow, a symbol of that promise.
Of God's faithfulness, his commitment to creation.
Amazing how a natural phenomenon can hold such meaning.
It is.
But even with a new beginning,
It seems humanity, well,
doesn't always learn.
the Tower of Babel,
A cautionary tale.
about ambition and pride.
The builders, they wanted to reach heaven.
Make a name for themselves.
Hubris.
Challenging God's authority.
It's not just about the tower, though, is it?
Oh no.
It's the desire to control our destiny.
To become like gods ourselves.
And that leads to trouble.
God sees their ambition as a threat.
A threat.
Not because he's jealous, but because he knows
Who knows what?
it leads to chaos, to division.
Okay.
So he intervenes, confusing languages, scattering them.
Like he's saying, hold on, I'm in charge.
And their plans aren't always his will.
And this scattered...
Explains the diversity we see today.
It does.
Diversity isn't a mistake.
It's part of the plan.
And a reminder about pride and humility.
Okay, from these grand, almost mythic events
The shift.
to the patriarchs.
The ancestor.
Full of adventure, intrigue.
Profound encounters.
So more personal stories now.
Yes, focusing on individuals, their relationships with God.
But they still have an impact
Oh, a huge impact.
on their descendants, the Israelite nation.
Their choices, struggles, triumphs, shape history.
I'm ready to meet these patriarchs.
As am I.
Learn how this chosen people, this nation, came to be.
It's a fascinating journey.
All right, let's start with the most famous,
Abraham.
father of faith.
His story is amazing.
A testament to trust, obedience, belief in God's promises.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Abraham, this incredible journey of faith,
He's willing to leave everything behind.
his home, family, his whole life,
Based on God's promise.
takes a lot of trust.
It does. Trust is key throughout his story.
But not blind faith, right?
No, a dynamic relationship.
God makes promises.
And Abraham demonstrates his faithfulness.
Through obedience, action,
Not just waiting around.
participating in the story.
Yes, and one of the most profound examples.
You're thinking of the near sacrifice of Isaac.
Exactly.
Imagine being asked to sacrifice your own son.
The son you've waited for your entire life.
It's gut-wrenching. Makes you question faith, obedience,
Is there a point where you say, no, this is too much?
right?
It's a question that's haunted theologians for centuries.
Really?
Some say it's the ultimate act of faith,
His willingness to obey?
even when faced with the unthinkable,
Others, though, see it as a cautionary tale.
a warning against blind obedience.
It's definitely complex,
Sparks a lot of debate.
but in the end, God intervenes.
Provides a ram to sacrifice instead.
So Isaac is spared,
It highlights God's mercy.
showing that he doesn't desire human
He
sacrifice,
values life and compassion.
even when things seem hopeless.
There's always the possibility of redemption.
A surprising turn of events.
From Abraham, we move to his son Isaac.
And then to Jacob.
And Jacob's story is, well, let's say, a bit more complicated.
Complicated how?
He's a bit of a schemer, a trickster.
A trickster.
He deceives his brother Esau.
To gain his birthright.
He even wrestles with God.
Oh yeah, the wrestling match.
One of the most powerful images in Genesis.
Jacob literally grappling with God.
Refusing to let go until he receives a blessing.
A metaphor for our own struggles.
We all have those moments, wrestling with the unknown,
Grappling with doubt, uncertainty,
pushing back against what we don't understand.
demanding answers, even from God.
And like Jacob, we may emerge changed.
Transformed by the experience.
Not about winning or losing.
But the journey, confronting our fears and doubts.
Finding a new level of understanding.
What's interesting, even though Jacob's flawed,
He's still chosen by God.
God doesn't just work with perfect people,
He can use anyone to accomplish his purposes.
even those with rough edges.
God sees the potential in each of us, even our imperfections.
Our flaws don't disqualify us.
From his grace, from playing a role in his narrative.
That's encouraging. So Jacob has 12 sons.
And their stories are just as dramatic as their father's.
Sibling rivalry, jealousy, Even attempted murder,
exploring family dynamics.
bonds that unite us, conflicts that tear us apart,
These 12 sons, they represent the 12 tribes of Israel
laying the foundation for the nation.
that will emerge later in the Bible.
These personal stories, connected to God's plan.
For a chosen people,
Out of these 12 sons, one stands out.
Joseph.
His story, probably one of the most well-known.
Betrayal, adventure, forgiveness, reconciliation,
He's a dreamer.
which makes him a target,
Or his jealous brothers.
who sell him into slavery.
The injustice he faces.
But he never loses faith in God.
His unwavering faith allows him to rise above.
He finds favor in Egypt,
Becomes second in command to Pharaoh.
and his ability to interpret dreams, it saves Egypt.
From famine, allows him to reunite with his family.
And forgive those who wronged him.
A powerful story of good over evil, redemption, forgiveness.
God working through difficult circumstances.
And Joseph's story bridges the patriarchal narratives,
With the Israelites' future in Egypt.
setting the stage for the Exodus.
And the formation of a nation.
We've covered so much ground, creation to the patriarchs.
And these ancient stories, they still resonate today.
They do. They speak to our desires for meaning, purpose,
The struggle with temptation, failure,
the power of forgiveness.
and the hope for a better future.
We've explored some key themes, events.
But there's still so much more to uncover.
I'm ready to dive even deeper.
Into the symbolism, the literary style.
The lasting impact of these stories.
There's a richness and depth that unfolds with each reading,
All right, let's move on to part 3 then,
where we'll explore those layers of meaning
and discover how Genesis still speaks to us today.
across the millennia.
Okay, final part of our Genesis deep dive.
Ready to wrap things up?
I am. We've gone from creation,
To the patriarchs.
the whole journey. Now I want to,
Connect some dots.
yeah, what themes really stand out to you?
One of the most powerful,
Yeah.
and one that sets the stage for, well, everything,
Everything.
is covenant.
Covenant, okay.
We see it first with Noah after the flood,
Right.
but it really becomes central
with,
to Abraham and his descendants.
I've always thought of it as like a fancy promise.
It is a promise, but
There's more to it.
it's deeper than that.
Okay, how so?
A covenant, it's ongoing.
Not just a one-time thing.
Right, it's binding, it creates a special relationship.
Between
Two parties,
in this case,
God and humanity,
specifically.
Abraham and his descendants.
So it's like this foundational agreement.
For the development of the Israelite nation.
Their role in God's plan.
Exactly, it's central to their identity.
How they understand their place in the world.
It's a dialogue
A dialogue.
between God's promises and human faithfulness.
It's not one-sided though, is it?
You're right.
God expects things in return.
Obedience, commitment to a certain way of life,
Responsibilities?
a relationship with responsibility,
Ascension?
between grace and responsibility
That's a big theme.
throughout the Bible, yes.
Something else that comes up a lot.
What's that?
Human choice versus divine intervention.
Ah, yes.
I've always wrestled with that.
Not just in Genesis, but in life,
How much control do we have?
over our own destinies.
When does God step in?
Big questions.
Genesis doesn't give a clear answer, does it?
No, it shows both human agency and divine intervention.
Like Adam and Eve, they choose to disobey.
Consequences follow.
But then God saves Noah.
Redirects history.
Not as simple either.
A complex dance between our choices and God's will.
I get that.
We have freedom, but choices have consequences.
And God intervenes.
Not to control us, but to guide, protect.
To set us back on the right path.
Sometimes, yes.
I also noticed how Genesis focuses on families.
Especially brothers.
Cain and Abel, Jacob and Esau, Joseph and his brothers.
It's true, a recurring motif
Showing us the best and worst.
of human nature.
Sibling stories, so powerful.
Deep bonds of family, love, loyalty.
But also jealousy, rivalry, violence.
They hold up a mirror to our own families.
The messy relationships that shape us.
And even in conflict, there's possibility of forgiveness.
Reconciliation. Like with Joseph.
He could have sought revenge.
But he forgives, offers a second chance.
Grace and mercy in action.
It really is.
So we've talked themes.
But what about how the stories are told?
The style, the language.
So rich, so evocative.
Genesis uses symbolism, imagery, poetic language.
Like adding layers of meaning.
Like the creation account.
Not just a scientific explanation.
God speaking the world into existence.
The Garden of Eden, so lush.
Serpent forbidding fruit, captivating our imaginations.
The timeless archetype. Paradise lost.
What we've lost, but long for.
Innocence, harmony, closeness with God,
Even small details are symbolic.
like Adam, formed from dust,
Eve from his rib,
pointing to our connection to earth,
our shared humanity.
interdependence.
So much meaning in simple stories.
Genesis invites us to read between the lines.
Look for deeper truths,
That's why it's still relevant today.
not just old stories.
A living text.
Speaking to our deepest longings.
Struggles, hopes.
Offering wisdom, guidance, a framework.
To understand our place in the world.
Our relationship with God.
So as we wrap up,
Our deep dive.
what do you hope listeners take away?
A sense of wonder.
Wonder.
And appreciation for these stories. Their richness, complexity.
Not just a document or rules.
An invitation to engage with life's big questions.
To wrestle with faith and doubt.
Discover the power of these narratives.
To shape how we understand ourselves, the world.
That's what I hope for.
That's beautifully said.
Thank you.
To our listeners, thank you for joining us
On this deep dive.
into the Book of Genesis.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it sparked your curiosity.
Inspired you to explore further.
These stories, they're full of surprises, challenges, insights,
That can enrich your life.
and your journey of faith.
Until next time.
Keep exploring,